training was in communication studies, majoring in video production. You might be asking why no video art. Well, my videos suck.
Not so bad, I've seen them.
But I realized and I remembered many years ago that when I was young, I enjoyed abusing mahjong tiles which the adults would use for gambling, to make structures and dismantle them. I also remember being fascinated with looking at construction sites, because construction sites compared to completed buildings seem to me to be organic, constantly growing, but also very, you have a lot of things you could see through the building as it was being made. With this series, what I'm trying to do are a number of things. One is to find a kind of third position between two polarities, two quite opposing perspectives in terms of urban conservation. For those of us who are very passionate about urban conservation, we hardly would stay in the middle. We would probably either be on the camp of the sentimentalists slash the conservationists, in quotation marks. And within this camp, you have people who feel that history is important and anything from the past, including buildings, traces that gives us a hint of where we come from so that we can understand the present and look forward. And then the other camp, we might call them the developmentalists or the pragmatic camp. They would say, yes, we would try our best to conserve what we can, but if it's far more expensive to conserve than to replace this old building with a new one, let's be pragmatic. So in this series, I'd like to kind of discover and develop a third position, which is to use humor and imagination to think about how we deal with buildings and the city. So far I've made 10 of these prints, 2 of which were made more recently, so it doesn't fall within the period. And all these were made last year. And I began with a different sub-theme of lost building. So the whole long list of ways to interpret a lost building, okay, ranging from a building that's demolished or collapsed, to a haunted house, to a building that has lost in a competition, to a totally fictional one. So I have kind of created Half Hay House, which is a building that cannot decide whether it's haunted or enchanted. And then an urban version of the crop circle. You'll see that within each print, I will have, other than the visual element, the text. The main title is the name of either the building or the city. This particular city is called Paradise Now, and it's my homage to the philosopher of daydreaming, Gaston Bachelard. The last line in this text says, "In Paradise Now, the buildings do not move." Now you may be thinking, why should I be stating the obvious? Now what is important here is that I'm trying to craft a scenario where buildings that are immobile is an exception rather than the norm. So this whole text is kind of crafted almost like a film trailer with all these scenarios of buildings trying to become better, taller, going on a holiday, and some anxieties here and there. Spiral Supermart would be the first piece in the series. And basically it's like a kind of a major mega factory proposed to be probably somewhere in China because they are rich. They can afford such a big factory. Well, it's a factory that collects collapsed buildings because in my observation, a collapsed building has to die 3 times. First, the structure crumbles, then the physical rubble is removed, and then after that, the memory of it is forgotten after everything settles. But I'm proposing that the rubble could be brought, like the rubble of Bank of China and Hong Kong, could be brought here, thrown down to the bottom of this factory, reconstructed and displayed or reused. So that you kind of sense there's I begin with a problem, but my solution could be quite absurd and ironic. You see, in most of these prints, there are no humans. Am I trying to propose a dehumanized world? There's one here, there's only one here. I suppose the reason that I focus on architecture and especially lost architecture or failed architecture is that, yes, on the one hand, you know, architecture is a bit like our clothes, you know, the clothes make the man, but a building can potentially facilitate human growth and interaction, but it can also restrict and control the way we think and behave. On the one hand, we have buildings that we are proud of, that kind of like represents the city, like Bilbao, Guggenheim. But according to philosopher Robert Harbison, he says that it is spaces and structures that are at the margin, meaning the ruins and gardens and monuments, where we can detect humans' deepest longings and highest aspirations. So with CCTV Tower, I think I can talk about like my typical creative process, because I began with being fascinated by David Attenborough's plant series, The Private Life of Plants, a particular episode on reproduction and balsam plants. And I thought, oh my God, you have the perfect representation of such a beautiful thing about nature. How do I pay homage to you? So what I did, as with all other pieces, would be to lay out a whole long list of phenomena, and then try to find connections among them. And I would select specifically connections that are the most perfect. So I created grand looking CCTV building that grows and becomes pregnant with new nature of itself and starts to explode. Now you notice that this kind of looks uncannily like a fractal. It wasn't planned, but as I was sketching out how this quite rectilinear grand design might change, I realized it was looking a little bit like a fractal, and then I kind of like went with the flow. Not so much about the rest, but Erasmus is my homage to Singapore's public housing redevelopment scheme, where there is no need to, you know, shift from one block to the next block. You just need to climb out of your windows into the new apartments, because the new apartment is just made in the gap between the blocks. So some people say it's kind of violent, and this particular one has got human bodies that are cut into parts. It's my imagination of how, you know, the Al Gore's environmental activism could be pushed to an extreme. And then at the end, I have this this building that is quite a loner, who was planned to be an Art Deco building, but was the construction of which was stopped halfway. And you see him in these 4 panels on his own plates without joining any of the cliques like these icons. I suppose what I like for this series is to create open doors for many ways of looking. I want to include as many kinds of audiences, both the kids and adults, layperson, and intellectuals. And yeah, because I'm quite greedy. Yeah, thank you.